Hello everyone, welcome to another live hangout here at Voice Essentials, and as you can probably hear, I am still getting over COVID. It has been I'll be honest, it's been a pretty rough week. And as many of you know, I'm triple vaxxed and the whole shebang, but it's been a bit of a rough ride, and just slowly starting to emerge from it now. If you've had COVID and you've experienced really significant symptoms and whatever, you know exactly what I'm talking about. This is not your common cold. I will say I've had worse. I have had worse colds and flus, particularly my allergy-induced flus tend to be certainly as bad as what I've experienced the last few days. Certainly the beginning of last week, as you recall, last week we had a special guest, it was Marcy Rosenberg Daniels, and she's a singing voice specialist, fabulous, and it just fortuitously happened that we were talking about singing when sick. And I thought I was pretty sick at that point, but can I tell you, I got worse. By Tuesday through Thursday, wow, unpleasant. Do not recommend to anyone. So if you're currently unwell, and I saw that Linda's currently a little unwell. Linda, I hope you get better. If you're currently unwell, and particularly if you're suffering from COVID, as I am, then I wish you all the best. Consequently, today we're going to be, it'll be a slightly shorter show, just simply from my capacity point of view. My voice, I need to be careful and manage my load. Excuse me. And so we will have to do that. Before we get into a few questions today's a Q&A, as you know. A few things to let you know about. Firstly, next week we have the author of this fabulous book, Complete Vocal Fitness, by Claudia Friedlander, and Dr. Claudia Friedlander, and she'll be joining us and to talk about biomechanics in singing. Really interesting topic. If you want to get the most out of your instrument, you need to know about biomechanics. And in particular, we're going to be talking about fascia. And so I want you to tune in next week to hear about all of that. Dr. Claudia is really well known worldwide in this area, this particular subject of biomechanics, and hence the book. Fantastic. I've read it cover to cover. Highly recommend. For those of you who are really, active and, go to the gym a lot and those sorts of things. So tune in next week. Remember, to get the reminders for when we go live, you've got to subscribe. You've got to hit the white bell icon. And that way, you'll get those email notifications to remind you. 1 o'clock every Monday, even when I'm sick, every Monday, 1 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time. So check your local guides. Wanted to let you know too that I'm currently in the process of redoing my free mini course, 7 Days to a Better Voice. Many of you have participated in that, and look, I'm not setting a scheduled date on when that will release. The old version is still live and it's very email driven, but what I'm doing is taking that email based free mini course and putting it over into the same framework, which will have associated videos just like my full purchased courses. And so I'll keep you abreast of that. I just wanted to update you on some news that I'm doing here. And so, yeah, I'll be shooting those videos sometime late June, I think. And then it will just be a matter of a few months of doing all the, getting it all looking nice and what have you. And so once you've done the current 7-day mini course, the 7 days to a better voice, you can't redo it, like the system doesn't allow you to, and that's by design. And so some people have said, oh, I want to redo the 7 days, and you can't. Well, what will happen is when I launch the new version, the whole rehashed version of 7 days to a better voice, you will be able to start that again, because it'll be in a sense, a new system, so you get to do it again. But it will too have a time frame on it. Finally, before we get into your questions, excuse my cough. Finally, just to let you know, this week, the Unstoppable Singer Summit is currently running. I've put a link in the description section of this video for those of you who might want to go and check this out. Now, this is a free summit. There is a paid back-end version, but if you want to have access to just some amazing people, then in regards to learning to sing across so many different areas, then check it out. As I said, the link is in the description section of this video. Go and check that out, because there's just going to be such a wealth of information there for you. And you know, the first tier of access is free. So go and check that out. And yours truly is presenting as a part of that, I think. I'm actually doing a pre-record sort of thing. I can't be live because when my time slot was, I'll be in bed. And so anyway, my pre-record session will go live, I think, I want to say Wednesday morning my time, which would be sort of, you know, Tuesday sometime for a lot of people in the US. Anyway, that's a little bit about what's happening. And as I said, I want to get into some questions today, remembering that if you do want your question answered, if you absolutely must have your question answered, the best way to get that done is to hit the super, what is it called? The super chat. Add a few dollars to your question and we prioritize your questions. Otherwise, we're just going to go through the questions one at a time in a chronological order. And we'll do that straight after this. Okay. Our first question comes from the one and only Mackenzie. Mackenzie's asked, what should I expect at a laryngologist / speech pathology, speech therapist voice evaluation? It really depends from laryngologist to speech pathologist, but some general things that they're going to ask you to do is it's likely that they're going to want to scope you, so they're going to want to have a look at the health of your vocal tract and the health of your vocal folds. They're going to want to look at, they're looking for two things. They're looking for organic nature issues, pathologies such as nodules and polyps or cysts or granulomas. These are the sorts of things that they're looking for. But they're also looking for functional issues. So they're looking to see, how does your voice behave when you phonate, when you create sound? And so often a laryngologist, and it's really great if a speech is in the room or a singing voice specialist is also in the space with you. It's really great because they get to ask you to make particular sounds while you're being scoped, and we get to see what is the behavior of the voice under scope, and we get to observe the function of the voice. And in fact, I've got a student from, where did he chime in from just recently? It was overseas. I can't, dear me, I'm a little bit foggy in the head, more so than usual. Anyway, he's from overseas. Doesn't have ready access to Pakistan. The student was from Pakistan, so he didn't have easy access to a laryngologist. But he's going back to the ENT that he'd been working with because he made some sounds for me where I was hearing a duplicitous, like a dual tone. And what we need to identify, due to some other comorbidities of issue going on for him, we just want to be able to have a look and get him to make that sound, because his initial assessment didn't show any issues. But what we want to do is find out, while he's making that sound under scope and getting that dual tone, we want to have a look and find out what's going on. And from there, he can then go into a speech pathologist and work on. So we're wanting to rule out pathologies, but we also want to observe the function. So these are some of the things that you can expect to do. And the way a laryngologist or a speech pathologist goes about doing that is going to be individualized. But you can also expect Mackenzie to answer a whole heap of questions, like, you know, do you smoke? What's your alcohol consumption? Are you vaping? Do you take recreational drugs? There's a whole range of, and I know for yourself, Mackenzie, with some of your health issues, they're going to ask you all of those things because they want to really build a full profile picture about you, so that they can really orientate their care profile to you. So I hope that's helpful to you there, Mackenzie. So let's go on to Alyssa's question, and she's writing here, how can I learn to write music and sing in front of people without getting paranoid? It's a very challenging thing to learn to do, to not, you know, freeze up. And one of those things is we do get captivated by the thought of, what are people thinking about me? What are people, you know, wondering about, you know, what I'm doing right now? And it is very understandable, firstly, that we get caught up in that sort of, you know, thought pattern. But equally, when we do that, we become very self-centered as a performer. And in the process, we become more fixated on what we're doing and what people think of us, as opposed to the actual task of performance is the delivery of a narrative, the communication of a message. You may have heard the saying, don't shoot the messenger. Yeah. And that's because at the end of the day, the messenger is not really the important part. The important part is the message. What is the context of the narrative that is being told? And when we as performers are able to let go of that sense of paranoia, to use your term, Alyssa, when we're able to let go of that and really focus in on, what am I trying to say? When I'm singing this song, what is the lyric saying? Or and this is orientating to the audience. What do I want the audience to take away from this? You know, because it's not always a simple, you know, narrative-driven activity, you know, especially when we're doing like party pop or, you know, material that is far more, you know, just happy-go-lucky. Well, the message of that is happiness and joy. We want the audience to be joyful and to celebrate and to just be caught up in that, you know, joyous, you know, moment. And when we do that and really hand ourselves over to performing in that way, then the audience can engage, you know, in like minds. So it's really a matter of getting the attention off one's self and getting it onto the audience and the task at hand. I'm not saying this is easy to do, Alyssa. This takes a lot of practice. There are a lot of things that I can teach here in my studio, teach students online, teach in my online courses. But one of the things that we do have to do practically to really develop in it, and that is, we need to perform to develop in performance. That's not to say there aren't stagecraft skills that we can you know, rehearse and develop and you know, really workshop. But at the end of the day, you've got to step onto a stage, stand in front of an audience, and deliver the narrative, deliver the intent. And so I would encourage you, you know, if just keep doing it. Just keep doing it. That is really what we want to see you doing. I'm just jumping in here. I'm trying to find the next question, because as you know, we've got our fancy this one here. Okay, so Jaden has asked, a few of my family members have trained their voice with you, and I'm interested in doing the same. I'm glad to hear that. I do recognize the name Van Ostrom, so I think I know who I'm referring to here, Jaden. How much do you charge for one-on-one coaching? To book a session, and there is a link in the description section of this below. If you go to the desjarts.com.au website, Jaden, there is a link there, and it'll take you, if you click on the book a lesson icon, then what that'll do is it'll bring up an online form that you can fill out. It's 160 Australian dollars for your first consult. We do that either online or here in the studio. I've been teaching online for the rest of this week at least, while I'm getting over COVID. But after that, we'll be back in studio. And then for recurring lessons, what happens is students join me on a per-term basis, weekly, fortnightly. For those in America, fortnightly means bi-weekly. I remember the first time I used the term fortnightly, and the American looked at me blankly, didn't know what fortnightly was. It's a pretty common term here in Australia, which is surprising. But anyway, so bi-weekly, and they're $140 for those ongoing recurring sessions. But the first session is the one you've got to book and pay for as a part of that process, $160. Jaden, yeah, look forward to receiving your booking. Let's go to the next question. And this is from Creative. Creative is asking how to have unique voice, because when singing and rapping need to be different than other contestants. This is going to sound like it's I'm being very flippant and offhand, but I don't want it to sound like that. But you already have a unique voice. When I think we ask, what does it take to have a unique voice? I think more often than not, what we're actually asking is, how do I get to be, to stand out and be more impressive than the other voices around me? And that too is an understandable thing. Well, the way to develop that, uniqueness, the way to have your voice have a sense of signature to it that is recognizable is, firstly, you have to spend time with it. You've got to spend time developing your vocal signature. And we do that by developing tone, by developing breath management. It's a technical development of your voice. And so as you spend more time, you'll start to acknowledge and recognize those nuances of your sound that make you unique, that make you different to everyone else. And you can then go looking to further enhance those unique characteristics. But if where a lot of people, come unstuck is they think to themselves, well, the way I'm going to be unique as a singer is I'm just going to, do different songs, and that has a place. Or I just want to make really weird sounds, and that too can have its place in the right context. But first and foremost, you've got to actually establish, a clarity around your sound, what you naturally create, and then from there go looking to develop your sound. I'm just going to turn my aircon on because it's getting a little warm in here. Okay, so I hope that's helpful, Creative, because yeah, don't try to stand out from other contestants. I think from different contestants by doing silly things with your voice either, because it's got to be sustainable. What you do with your voice, we want it to be sustainable. You've got to be able to do it again and again and again. What we want to avoid is the temptation to create something that's so unique but can't be repeated in an efficient, sustainable manner. There is nothing more concerning for a singer than to have their career develop based on a sound that is aesthetically very cool and really exciting, and the audience locks onto that and goes, love that sound, and then to have that sound just slowly but surely wear and tear on the physiology of that voice to the point where the voice becomes quite compromised at a health level. And then the problem for the singer is, but that's the sound the audience want. And so I've got to keep giving them that sound, otherwise they're not going to be that excited by what they're hearing. And so that to morph, to pivot away from that aesthetic can be quite challenging. And I have seen this happen a number of times. I'm thinking of a particular case where it was disastrous for that singer. Okay, so what have we got here? I've just seen Evo's super chat. Thank you, Evo, and really appreciate you throwing in some dollars to support the channel. When voice coaches refer to students squeezing when reaching for high notes, what exercises of yours can help us hardwire not squeezing? Much love, Doc. Evo, I don't know whether you're referring to voice coaches on TV talent shows. It's not an uncommon thing to hear that sort of a throwaway observation, and more often than not, that's actually all it is. It's just an observation by someone who often doesn't know. They can recognize when the squeezing's happening, but may not have the skills or the expertise to direct a student or a singer in how not to do what they are observing them do. So the squeezing when reaching can happen. First and foremost, we go to breath. So as we sing higher, there's a great temptation for the breath to start to push. And we have the sound just getting, the larynx will get tighter because the pressure is getting greater. And so the larynx goes into this valving function and everything just starts to strain under the load of that heightened pressure and higher note. There's no, you ask here, how can we hardwire not squeezing? Actually, I'm not convinced you can hardwire not squeezing. This is and I often refer to in my lessons, and Evo, you and I have had lessons together, so I'm fairly confident I will have used terminology like tension management. And the reason we work on tension management is because we have to develop the ability to manage our tension. And in big part, we do that, by virtue of our breath management. Our breath management informs our tension management, and our tension management informs our breath management. I remember watching the 2000 Olympics here in Australia, in Sydney, and I watched a a post-race interview. This is just for the semi-finals, but it was an Australian was in the race. It was for a 400 meter race. It might have been 800 meter. And the runner came out, finished her race. She didn't place, but she'd done very well just to get to the semi-finals. And the interviewer asked her, so, one of those great journalist questions, so what were you thinking out there? And her response, I've never forgotten her response. Her response was, I was just thinking to myself the entire way what my coach and I had worked on for the last number of years. And she made this action, no tension, no tension, no tension. And I thought, wow, there is something in that for us as singers. Muscles, for the most part, only want to activate and tighten, contract. But when they are not enabled to release that contraction, typically through an agonistic-antagonistic relationship with another muscle, where that other muscle is able to pull them out of that contraction and to release that activity, then that tension just gathers and gathers and gathers until such time as you in singing we'll get that vocal lockup. And so learning to manage our tension, as again is in part driven by good breath management, is such an important role. But it's never a thing of set and forget or hardwiring it, as Evo's question suggests. It's something that we have to constantly be monitoring and managing. Now, do we get our technical development to a point where it's not something we have to be thinking about absolutely every single note we sing? Of course. But there are still moments in any song where I will still have to remind myself, release. And it's often the trigger word I'll have in my head, release. Daniel, you're gathering tension, release. And that is something that you might want to give some thought to. Apologies for the cough, but it is what it is. Okay, let me come down. So, is it Kapal? Kajal has asked here, tips and tricks to improve high-pitched vocals. Again, I think actually that is just, I think, kind of feel like I've answered that question just previous for Evo when we talk about managing tension. And I think it was our next week's guest, Claudia, if I'm remembering this correctly, wrote an article about pole vaulting and the biomechanics and how that relates to sing, which is really interesting because I did a video and used exactly the same illustration, but this video is one of my very, very first ones. So this is back in 2014, 15. And where we talk about, and her article refers to the penultimate run-up. We focus so much as singers on that high note, that singularity for a pole vault of that pole, that beam, I should say, that you've got to use the pole to get up and over. But in fact, an Olympic pole vaulter, we're talking a lot of Olympics today, an Olympic pole vaulter is actually going to be able to be quite knowledgeable of how they're tracking as they run with the pole towards, jamming the pole into I don't know what the butt point is, but where before, and then as they leap up. And so good pole vaulter will know a lot about the potential success of clearing the beam in the run-up to. And that's the same with our vocals. you know, there is, whenever I'm working on a top note with a singer, like a really high note, it's very rarely the focus of our attention becomes that single top note. More often than not, the focus, the focus is on those penultimate notes, the lead up. What are the notes in the lead up to? What are the vowels that we're having to sing in the movement up to that top note? What is the volume? What is the texture? There's a whole range of things, and that is something that you might want to consider as tips and tricks. Look at the notes immediately preceding the top note. Don't focus on the top note. Okay, how are we going for time? We're not going to be here much longer, everyone. So I'm just going to go to one more question from. Hang on, my apologies. So Swadesh, now just so you know, if you absolutely must have a question answered today, put in a super chat, because after this question, if I don't get a super chat, we're going to finish up. I can feel my voice going, come on, Daniel, you've done enough. Okay, so Swadesh, how to achieve intonation and articulation. So there's actually two things going on there. Intonation, it could be argued intonation and articulation are, connected. But let's recognize that they're two different things here. Intonation is happening. Oh, I just saw Scuba Girl's offering of the super chat, $20. Thank you very much, Scuba Girl. How to achieve intonation and articulation. Intonation, we have to manage intonation first at a phonatory level, at the laryngeal level, where the vocal folds are actually oscillating at exactly the right frequency to create exactly the right note. Then as the note travels through the vocal tract, we then shape and filter that resonance, those frequencies, because we as humans create complex sound. We filter those resonance frequencies, and that can actually pull the sound flat or push it sharp. And so we have to manage that. And then we shape that with our articulators into vowels and consonants and those sorts of things. And so we're doing that all day, every day when we talk. We talk with pitch. Not in the same melodious way that we expect to hear in singing, where we really hear a greater variant of pitch. But certainly we do speak to pitch. And then we work about managing that pitch in accordance with whatever the process goes. And it just comes back to drilling. Learning to sing is a skill. And we develop the skill just like we develop any other skill. Now, what we can't determine is how good you'll become at that skill. That is an individualized thing, and some people are far better in their skill formation around ball sports, around painting, around being a garbage collector. I am a super dag. Last night, before I went to bed, I was watching Mighty Ships, and Mighty Ships is like a Discovery Channel kind of show, and they were showing the guys and girls who this was in China, where they pick those really they take the containers on and off the ship with the moving arms, and they drop it, and some men and women are better at that skill than others because there's coordination, eye to hand, and it looks very dangerous and very cool, and they're doing it at a really quick rate of knots. Well, that's a skill, you know, and you develop that by, I'm sure they develop that skill by just the more containers that they move, the better and quicker they get at it, the more accurate they become at it. And it's the same with our singing. Fortunately, if you drop a note on anyone, it won't kill anyone. But you know, we develop our skills with those sorts of things. So there you go. We are going to call it a day there. And thanks for tuning in. Can I remind you, next week we've got this one here, and we've got our guest next week, Claudia Friedlander. Dr. Claudia Friedlander is going to be joining us. Hit the white bell icon and when you subscribe so you get the reminders. That way you're not going to miss next week's session, where I expect that, you know, if my trajectory of healing continues, I'll be in much better shape than I am today. And that will be good. It's been a rough week. Yeah, I hope we get to hang out again next week. And also, don't forget to check out the Unstoppable Singer Summit, because that's super cool as well. Thanks for the super chats to Scuba Girls and to Evo. I really appreciate that, and very much look forward to catching you all again soon, when you always hear me close off by saying, I'm Dr. Dan. Sing well.